Welcome back to our mini-series on meditation and self-development. Last week we already spoke about integration of our spiritual practice into our daily life, especially by the principles of what we call the Noble Eightfold Path, and also the principles by which we can decide just how much to integrate into the norms of society. But this week we're going on a little bit further to meet up the other part of this second great challenge to the self-developer, which is commitment to practice. We already talked about integration, now we're going to be talking more about commitment to practice, because both of these are very necessary indeed if we're going to make a go of our practice of self-development. Normally when we do good things for other people or for ourselves in the world, we tend to do them on a one-off basis. Sometimes we don't string them together to see whether they are really part of a path which is leading us onwards in life. But part of the principles which we're going to be looking at today are that really the good deeds or the virtuous deeds, the things which we do which contribute to our self-development, are all building one on the other to lead us eventually to become a better person. The things that we do once or twice in a day or once or twice in our lives, yes, they do give us a feeling of positivity in our mind. They may make us feel good about ourselves for a certain period of time. But later on this feeling may disappear completely. The sort of efforts which we are talking about today are the sort of efforts in self-development which we do so often, so habitually, that they become ingrained in our own flesh and blood, to the extent that they become really a part of our own personality. The key word in this sort of perfectionism in our own self-development really needs a great deal of commitment and earnest in the practice of good deeds. And this is something which can apply to all aspects of our spiritual practice, our working life, our studies if you may like, and it goes beyond simply doing good deeds in life. Really the main principle of this perfectionism, or doing good deeds on a level that they are becoming part of our flesh and blood, is that we should have no excuses about how well we do them. Because most people have limits to how much commitment they have to the good deeds which they do. You ask the person to do something to the best of their ability, to the best of their quality they can manage. Normally they will complain that they don't have enough time to do it, or they may not have enough resources to do it, or they may not have enough help or labor to be able to finish something in time. But for a sort of person who is interested in perfectionism, even these sort of excuses are something that they will put aside when they come to doing the best things, the things which are counting for the self-development in life. And this can apply to all aspects of our life. For example, if we are students in school, then we ought to be making sure that we do the best we can when we come to study in our school. It's not just to pass our examinations that we're in school, but in fact it is to gain the wisdom and gain the knowledge which are going to pave the way to success in our life, both in worldly and spiritual ways. Most people think of going to school as just a chore, but if we are really interested in self-development, we should be trying to see if there are always better ways in which we can study. For example, by seeking out the teachers who are really going to be able to help us to work towards our wisdom and our vocational knowledge which is going to be helpful to us in life. We ought to listen attentively to what they have to teach, treating them with respect instead of just seeing them as those who have been hired to lecture to us. We ought to be attentive in what we listen to from what they have to say, and we ought to give the time which is necessary for what they have taught us to sink in, being committed to putting what they have taught to us to our memories as well. After we have memorized what they have taught us, then we should reflect on what we have learned. If we don't memorize what they have taught us, then it's very hard to know how we can reflect on these things, because otherwise the knowledge will just stay in the books. Every sort of knowledge has something which we have to memorize. If it's a language you're learning, then you have to memorize the vocabulary, you have to memorize the grammar. And if you are learning your timetables for your arithmetic, then you have to memorize those as well. So there are always aspects of knowledge which you have to memorize. If you don't put in the effort to memorize those things, then it's as if you haven't really committed yourself to the things which you're trying to learn. Last of all, you have to apply what you have learned, both for the benefit of yourself and also for the benefit of other people. If you apply it only for your own self-interest, then it's said that you haven't really learned all that there is to learn. You have to apply it for the benefit of others too, to really get down to the roots of that sort of knowledge. So you can see that even with study, this is something where you can measure yourself up to see whether you are really earnest in your studies or not. This is because the real work behind applying yourself in this way is not just the work of being a good student, but in fact it's the work of the mind. If you approach what you do in the right way, then it builds up habits in your mind of sincerity and of always trying your best no matter what you turn your hand to. Otherwise, it's rather like you tell lies to yourself when you are doing anything. If you're not putting the whole of yourself into what you do, then it's as if you are not being totally honest with yourself. And this is something which we're trying to overcome when we are pursuing perfection. So let's see how we can really be earnest, how we can really be honest with ourselves in other situations. For example, supposing we have certain duties which have been allocated to us, supposing we have accepted and taken on certain duties, and we have to try to do those duties to the best of our ability, to try to be consistent, not start off in a diligent way and later on become more shoddy in the things we're doing, but try to keep up the quality of the duties which we're doing throughout the time which we are committed to those duties. In a working context, many people feel they just go to work in order to get a salary, but in fact that's not entirely true. What you get at work is many things. You get to show off your abilities to have craftsmanship, and in fact the better you work, the more your skillfulness will come in the work which you are doing. If you take pride in your work, then in fact this sets up a much better quality of mind which you can bring with you to your meditation later in the day. But if you're a sort of person who never finishes work you start out on, or if you do work with the wrong timing or in an inappropriate way, or you never get around to starting the work because you're more interested in other things, then what you get from the workplace is really very little. Your workplace is more in opposition to your self-development than being a part of it. So you should try to extend the principles of perfectionism even to the working environment. If you find that you're the sort of person who goes to work, but you're more interested in eating, or you're more interested in sleeping, or you're more interested in drinking alcohol or taking intoxicants, or you're more interested in your boy or girlfriends, you're more interested in gambling or habitually getting up late, or you're full of excuses, then you find that what you should gain in your work is really significantly decreased. You should always try to work to the best of your ability, and the things which you choose to do in the workplace ought to be things which are really things which are of benefit to society. Last week we already talked about some of the livelihoods which we should try to avoid. But if you are doing something which is really of benefit for society anyway, then you should really put in the best of your efforts to make sure that society does receive something beneficial which is worthwhile for all the efforts which you put into it. The principles which we normally use in order to be successful in our work are four, the so-called four bases of success, or iddhipada. For example, we need to have the enthusiasm and initial inspiration and willing to do the work in the first place. Without that, we can never build up the enthusiasm to get started on the work which we are doing. Once we've got started, then we need to follow on with the work until we reach a successful conclusion in the work. And last of all, we should always go over our work a second time to see if there's a better way in which we could have done it, or a more efficient way, so that our time spent at work is always moving towards a more perfect way of achieving the task which we are trying to fulfill. So if you've been in work for 10 years and you're still doing the same old thing in the same old way, then it's as if you're not really interested in self-development. But if you're always trying to find new and better ways to do the same thing, then that would seem that you have brought your self-development even into the working environment. Last but not least, when you are in the workplace, one of the things which really helps your job satisfaction a lot is to be able to get along well with the people around you in your workplace. So if you're the sort of person who doesn't get along well with your workmates, then again this is another area of your work which you could perhaps be building on and improving on as you are doing your job. Another sort of area in which you can build on your perfectionism is also our earnest in the connection with the subject of our punctuality or our timing. You might think that this is not a particularly important aspect, but in fact, even for young children growing up, the aspect of timing can be very important indeed. If you don't teach a child to go to bed on time, then they wake up sleepy, they wake up with no enthusiasm to go to school anymore. The result of such negligence would lead them perhaps to lie instead of going to school, or to be uninspired in their studies, and in fact they could waste their whole future just as a result of not having gone to bed on time. So you can see punctuality is something which is very important. It's something which we should try to train ourselves in order that we can make the best use of our time, so that we can see that time is an opportunity and it's not to be wasted. This is very important for our self-development, where time is so precious anyway. Another thing which we have to be earnest in our pursuit of perfection is our relationships with people. Sometimes you may wonder how you can afford to be so honest and so unconditional with every person you meet. Well, of course, some people are able to be more unconditional with more people. But if you are unable to be unconditional with everyone which you meet in your relationships, then you should start at least with those who are your nearest and dearest. Particularly important in your relationships are the trust and the unconditional nature of the relationships which you should have with your own parents and with your children and with your spouse. If you can manage to be unconditional in your relationships with other people, such as your friends or your colleagues or your subordinates, then that is the more the merrier. But you shouldn't overextend yourself with those members of your extended family if you have not been able to fulfill your unconditional relationships yet for those who are nearest and dearest to you. Last but not least, you should be earnest in your practice of good deeds of every sort. Of course, we mean by that you should be unconditional in the time and the importance which you give to your meditation. But this also applies to things like generosity and self-discipline, renunciation, wisdom, fortitude, practice, truthfulness, resolution, loving-kindness, and equanimity, which are what we call the 10 perfections. They are in fact the qualities which we are trying to build up for ourselves to the point that they become ingrained in our very being. If we can manage to be sincere in everything which we aim at, what we will find is that our life starts to fall into place in a way which really does fit in with our meditation practice. What we will find is that no matter what we're doing, it contributes the energy and the inspiration to the meditation practice in a way that is almost as if we are meditating as we are doing other things. It's like everything which comes to us is an opportunity by which we can train ourselves if this is the case. So don't see life as an obstacle to your meditation, but see it as an opportunity for integrating and committing the good qualities which you have in your meditation to other aspects of your life as well. In this way, you can bring perfectionism into every aspect of your life, and your life will become an integrated whole, all a part of your efforts in self-development. So, today we've been looking at ways to build commitment into aspects of our self-development which might concern the quality of the mind. During the coming week, why not try observing how much earnest you put into the things which you do in your life, and see if these strategies which we've talked about today have been useful to you. If you find you're not making as much progress as you might want to do in your meditation, then why not see whether you are lacking earnest in your relationships, in your punctuality, your work, or your duties, because some of these may be affecting the amount of energy which is left to you when you come to do your meditation. If you find that you have any doubts about your progress, then please feel free to get in contact with the Meditation for All program, and we'll be more than happy to answer any queries which you may have. But in the meantime, we'll be going on next week to look at some ways to earn ourselves more friends and also enemies if we do it in the wrong way. In the meantime, please keep up your daily meditation, and I'll be seeing you again at the same time next week.